What's going on, Skullbrains? Welcome to another episode of Skullbrain TV, and in this episode, we are going to find out what happened to Orkan as we continue our journey along the Ancestral Trail.
When he, who is the Chosen One, shall tread upon the ancient path, and battle there to overcome
the forces of the dark.
The Ancestral Trail, an epic story of myths, magic, and monsters. Book 2, Tolosh of the Garoon, Mortal Danger in Enchanted Waters.
Okay, in the last episode, Richard and his newfound friends faced the almighty moss beast Sumar, the Slime River Ghoul. After facing their adversary, Orkan mysteriously disappears. What happened? We're about to find out. But before we do, have you watched the Ancestral Challenge for this week? If not, you can check it out here, and then come on back and see how you go at finding the hidden objects. Alright, let's do this.
On the second day, rock conceals and grass deceives, but heroes win the day. An arrow gold behind the leaves shows the brave the way. Peril, water, death await. Avoid the tempting hand. Purple eyes that have no fate, twice arrive, but not too late. To pluck from death the shining grail, and lead them to another place.
Neither Richard nor Melik could see where Orkan might have gone. Peering nervously around, they left the shelter of the boulders. Then they heard Orkan's strangled cries. "Help! Help! Somebody help me!" "Orkan, where are you? I can't see you," Richard shouted. "Over here, near the tree." Richard scanned the area. "Look, Melik, down there," he cried. Richard and Melik ran over and found Orkan lying spread-eagled on the ground. He was pinned in position by dozens of dark red worms. Their long, thin bodies lanced from the ground and wrapped around Orkan's limbs with sinewy strength. "Try and get to my sword," Orkan said urgently. "Cut these things off. Be careful where you tread. I think the whole patch is infested." Gingerly, Richard leaned forward and pulled Orkan's sword from its scabbard. He could only just reach, and as his fingertips closed round its pommel, he saw a flickering in the ground. He snatched the weapon and jumped back. Then he went quickly to work on the worms. Once severed, the bodies whipped smartly back into the earth. Soon, Orkan jumped free. "What on earth are they?" Richard asked, watching as the last slithery body disappeared into the ground. "Ugh. I don't know," Orkan shuddered. "We've got a long way to go yet," Orkan said, taking his sword back off Richard. "And we're bound to see a lot more dangerous beasts before this quest is finished. For now, we'd better get on. Which way does the book say, Melik?" The dwarf cast a worried glance at Orkan and tugged nervously at the straps that secured the Book of Prophecies. Then something caught Richard's eye. "What was that sparkling?" he said. "Melik, pass me the book." As Melik took the book from his shoulders, Richard carefully inspected it. He saw nothing but dust and parchment. Then the same glint showed as he handed it back. "There," Richard said. "There's something in the spine." He pulled out a narrow length of metal which had a glass arrow set into it. The glass was coloured, but Richard could not say precisely what colour it was. First it seemed one and then another, as if the whole spectrum was battling for supremacy. "What is it?" he asked Melik. "It must be the ancient pathfinder," Melik gasped. "It's one of our oldest treasures. Everyone thought it long lost. Can I see it?" As Richard handed Melik the mysterious object, the colours in the glass died down and it turned a dull, dusty grey. I don't know how it works," Melik said, "but if our legends are true, it should guide you to your heart's desire on the path of life." "Well, our lives depend on the pods now," Richard said, "so if we want to find one, this should show us the way." "Well, that's right," Melik replied. Grasping the instrument in his hand, Richard swung it in an arc across the plain. Nothing happened at first, but as he turned, the tip of the arrow began to glow a rich amber. Then, when it was pointing roughly upstream, the metal pulsed, and a flush of blue ran down the glass. They stood transfixed as its cool radiance lit up Richard's palms. "It glows strongest in that direction," Richard said, "where that awful wailing is coming from." In their excitement at their surprise find, the three had ignored the strange noise. Let's go," Orkan said with an impatient shrug. "We'll look at Melik's book later." "Alright," Richard said, returning the pathfinder to Melik, who slid it into its hiding place. The dwarf lifted the heavy book back onto his small shoulders. The three trudged along the dusty grassland, following the river at a wary distance. The vast clearing stretched in a wide crescent, fringed by the forest. After a while, shrubs sprouted here and there. The boulders became fewer, then the river widened into a large, clear lake. As they got close to the lake, the wailing abated. Richard noticed some strange hairy growth swirling around in the water. Then he saw that they were heads with long flowing hair. Suddenly the heads rose in unison, and their piteous cries for help filled the air again. "Help us! Save us!" Richard turned around. "They must be drowning. Quick, Melik, your rope." "Wait," Orkan said. "They could be Tolosh. Get down, both of you, now." Following Orkan's example, Richard and Melik threw themselves to the ground. "What's wrong?" Richard hissed. "Shh! Over there," Orkan said. "Look." They saw a tall figure in rough blue battle dress approaching the lake. As the figure drew near the water's edge, the voices started pleading with him. "Help us! We're trapped!" Now that he was closer, the trio could see a face with high cheekbones, yellow skin, and almond-shaped eyes that glinted in the sunlight. "A leopard man," Orkan murmured. The figure bent towards the water and stretched out his hand. Then it happened. Suddenly, the leopardman's face contorted with horror. As the three looked on, they saw the almond-eyed traveller being pulled into the midst of the wailing figures. "Look over there!" Melik pointed across the lake. "As I thought," Orkan growled. Richard followed their gaze. The bank of dead grass was beginning to move. It stirred in clumps and tussocks until the whole lakeside appeared to be alive. As it rippled and ruckled, he saw that it was not grass at all, but hair. As Richard watched spellbound, the mass of hair separated into individual heads that rose on tiny doll-like bodies. When their mouths opened, Richard's heart gave a jump, and he forgot any comparisons that he might have made with dolls. It looked as if the creatures' heads were about to split in two, revealing gaping chasms lined with serried ranks of sharp, shark-like teeth. One by one, the creatures slid like otters into the lake. Only the barest ripple revealed their presence beneath the surface. Suddenly, the leopardman gave a convulsive jerk and disappeared from sight. A second later, he re-emerged, waving an arm that ended at his elbow. His face screwed up in pain as blood spurted from his amputated limb. The water became a boiling, snapping fury of piranha like Tolosh. The long-haired creatures had joined in the feeding frenzy. The traveller came out once again, but this time he was unrecognisable beneath a seething coat of wet fur. Then he went down, for the final time. Within seconds, the lake was calm. All that remained of the traveller was a red bloom that spread smokily through the water before drifting idly downstream. On the opposite bank, the Tolosh were out of the water and drying themselves in the sun. Before long, they were once more invisible against their surroundings. Those in the water had grown silent, waiting for another victim. For a while, the three were numb with shock. Then Orkan broke the silence. "I was going to tell you about the Tolosh when that leopard man came along," he said glumly. "They hide near water and use decoys to trap unsuspecting travellers. They pretend to drown or to be in trouble and plead for help. On land, they're harmless, but in the water, well, you saw for yourselves what they're capable of." "I wonder if this was in the Book of Prophecies," Melik muttered. Then, riffling through the pages, he read aloud. "Rock conceals and grass deceives, but heroes win the day. An arrow gold behind the leaves shows the brave the way. Peril, water, death await, avoid the tempting hand. Purple eyes that have no fate twice arrive, but not too late, to pluck from death the shining grail and lead them to another place." Melik and Orkan turned questioning eyes toward Richard. Richard thought for a moment. "The first two lines make sense, but the rest, I'm not sure. Could it be your arrows, Orkan? No, yours aren't golden. He looked over at Malik's shoulder, frowning at the old-fashioned script. I've got it. The Pathfinder. That's shaped like an arrow, isn't it? Avoid the tempting hand, water and death must be a warning about those Tolosh. I don't understand the purple eyes twice, though. Oh, I think we should move on now, Orkan shrugged. The trouble is, I don't know this area too well. There's someone coming, Malik cried. We've got to warn him. The three ran towards the figure, shouting for him to stop. At the same time, the decoy's wailing started again, drowning out their warning cries. Spotting the trio, the figure stopped just short of the lake and waited for them. What's the hurry? He spoke in an easy drawl. It was another leopardman. Richard had never met a leopard man in his life, and yet he sensed Golan's voice telling him to trust the stranger. Then Richard noticed his eyes. They were purple, as in the riddle. Tolosh, Richard panted. There's Tolosh in the lake. Tolosh? The stranger queried. The decoys were still wailing and pleading. Help! We're stuck in the mud! Please help us! Don't listen to them, Richard said. They've just eaten a leopardman who went to help them. Ah, that must have been Rabbit, the stranger said. He went on ahead of me. He was a good fighter. He looked down for a moment, then raised his head. My name's Murkhat, by the way. And you are? Suddenly his dagger came to rest against Richard's windpipe. Let him go, Malik shouted bravely. He's the chosen one. The purple eyes slid sideways. That's easy to say. I'll kill this fool and slice the rest of you to ribbons before you know what's happening. He pushed on his dagger so that a trickle of blood welled at Richard's throat. Now, who are you? Just a minute, Orkan said, drawing his sword so quickly that Murkhat felt its tip on his heart before he had a chance to move. Harm the boy, and you're dead. Murkhat glanced at Orkan, but he made no attempt to drop his weapon. The boy's been given a quest by Golan, keeper of the life force, Orkan declared furiously. Murkhat's sword moved back a fraction. He's the only one who can overcome the evil one. Besides, we just saved your life. Perhaps I do owe you one. He gestured towards the lake and sheathed his dagger. Richard breathed a sigh of relief and touched his throat. There was no real harm done, but now he felt cold and tired. Richard wondered whether he would be able to see this quest through. I am a man of honor, Murkhat said proudly. You saved my life, so I'll do anything I can to help you. We're looking for the life force pods, Richard said with relief. What do these pods look like? Murkhat asked. Well, they're small and smooth, Richard explained, and dark and shiny. The prophecy says, pluck from death the shining grail. Well, the Holy Grail is what King Arthur's knights search for, just as we're searching for the pods. Plucking from death, Richard nodded towards the creatures, could mean that they have the pod in there. The sound of splashing echoed from the lake. The Tolosh decoys had been listening to their conversation. A plaintive whine came from the decoys. We can help you! There's a pod in a casket at the bottom of the lake. You just need to dive for it. Come, we'll show you where it is. Murkhat's eyes narrowed to venomous slits. He strode towards the water and aimed his spear. It missed the decoys. Wait, Richard said, they'll kill you just as they killed your friend. Look over there. He pointed to the opposite bank where the grass was already beginning to heave. I have a better idea. Richard spoke with Malik and Orkan, and then to the long-haired creatures in the water. He said, How do we know you have the pod? I'll come in and get it, but first, I want to see it. By now, the Tolosh were plopping into the water in anticipation. One decoy gave a nod and beckoned to the others. Then she disappeared under the water. While Richard and his companions stared out over the lake's glassy surface, the decoys swam down to the underlying ooze. They moved with sinuous ease, turning and wriggling eel-like in the underwater currents. They were no longer decoys, but true water Tolosh. Their faces showed the same rapacious teeth as the land Tolosh, but their skin was more hideous. A lifetime spent in the water had rotted their features to a pulpy grey mass. Eyes bulged like gluey balls. Lips had become scaly strips of flesh. Noses were little more than collapsing blobs of gristle. On some, the chin had fallen away to leave nothing but bare bone. Down they swirled to the bottom of the lake, where amidst a mass of weeds lay a half-buried casket, its surface covered with slime. Shriveled hands probed eagerly at its lock, flung open the lid and snatched a small object from within. Then, in a flurry of activity that whirled clouds of silt into the clear water, the Tolosh sped upwards and held up the pod. "Bring it closer," Richard commanded. The decoy swam towards the shore. "Now!" Richard shouted. In Orkan's practiced hand, Melek's rope whipped through the air. It wrapped itself around the decoy's wrist, which instantly reverted to its hideous form. He gave a sharp tug and the pod flew from her hand. Then Richard snatched it out of the air. "Got it!" he cried triumphantly. Orkan, Melek and Murkhat crowded around him. The Tolosh shrieked and thrashed the water. Then they fell silent. Richard stored the pod in his bag. "One down, 5 to go," he grinned at the others. "I can't believe we've done it." Orkan smiled. "I don't think we should hang around here. Which way next?" Melek pulled out the pathfinder and handed it to Richard. Once again, the colours in the small arrow trembled into life before the tip turned faintly golden. "This way," Richard murmured.
"There is a riddle about the pathfinder somewhere in the Book of Prophecies," Melek said. "Next time we stop, we'll have to find out exactly how it works."
As Melek slid the pathfinder back in the spine of the book, Orkan turned to Murkhat. "What's up ahead?" "Forest, to begin with. I can show you the way, though. By the look of you lot, you've already had a hard journey." For the first time, the three realised what a battle-weary spectacle they must make. Richard and Orkan were smeared with dried slime from their encounter with the moss beast, and Melek was caked with mud. The trek across the grasslands had laid a sprinkling of red dust on all of them. As they moved off, Richard told Murkhat his story from the beginning. "Impressive," Murkhat said, "but your troubles are not over yet." He nodded ahead to where the outriding trees of a large forest rose from the plain. "This is where the real test starts, for all of us." After the brightness of the grassland, the forest gloom left Richard feeling disorientated. It was good to be under cover once again, but here, the dark foliage could hide anything. The three followed their strange guide as he led them deeper into the trees. "Keep close behind me," Murkhat muttered, "and tread exactly in my footsteps. There's something I don't like here. The forest feels different. The paths seem to have changed. Everything's quieter. The trees look greyer. I can't help feeling we're being lured into a trap." "Seems we're doing fine for now anyway," Richard said. "Oh no, we're not," Orkan broke in. "Listen." From deep in the forest they heard a thundering crunching sound as if something large was moving through the undergrowth. The noise had a rhythmic quality, like a squad of soldiers marking in step. "Could be Khazards," Murkhat hissed. "The evil one's stormtroopers. If it is, we're really in trouble. Quick, get into this thicket over there." Orkan plunged into a clump of thorn trees, burrowing his way through at ground level, where the branches were sparsest. Richard and the others tunneled swiftly after him. At the heart of the thicket was a small space, where some animal had made its lair in the past. Here the four waited in dread, as the thundering noise came nearer. Then, when the sound was almost on top of them, it stopped abruptly. They crouched as still as they could, hardly daring to breathe. From outside came a curious high-pitched whistling, as if a train had just left off a head of steam. It lasted almost a minute before petering out into silence. Richard had never felt more afraid in his life. He stared at the thorns in front of him, willing whatever was out there to go away. It did not work. As he prayed, the whole thicket was ripped open with terrifying force. And that brings us to the end of book number 2. So, how'd you go with the Ancestral Challenge for this week? Were you able to find all of the hidden objects? And do you think the Tolosh were based on Rusalki or Gillikango? Make sure you check out the pinned comment below to find a link to download this week's map pieces, and be sure to join us next week when I release the Ancestral Challenge for book number 3. And until then, stay tuned and stay Skullbrain.